It is the year 632 CE. The Prophet Muhammad has just passed away, and the atmosphere in Medina is just, well, it's heavy.
Yeah, completely chaotic.
Right, chaotic and just thick with grief. Behind a closed curtain, the Prophet's immediate family is quietly weeping. They are, carefully washing his body to prepare it for burial.
It's this incredibly intimate, deeply sorrowful scene.
Exactly. But then, literally just down the street, hidden away in a secret meeting hall, his closest political allies are already scrambling for control.
It is a moment of profound whiplash, honestly.
It really is. Within hours of his death, a completely unified spiritual movement is about to fracture forever, and that is what we are unpacking in our deep dive today.
Yeah, we're looking at one of the most high-stakes, ruthless political scrambles in human history.
And as we get into this, for you, the listener, we need to set a really clear ground rule. We are exploring historically and religiously charged events that form the very root of the Sunni and Shia divide.
Which is obviously a very sensitive topic.
Extremely. So our goal today isn't to take a theological side or, endorse any specific political viewpoint. We are simply stepping into this historical minefield to impartially report and analyze the ideas laid out in our guide for today.
Right, which is Wilferd Madelung's groundbreaking historical study, The Succession to Muhammad.
Exactly. Madelung's work asks this really profound core question. How did a unified religious movement immediately fracture over leadership?
And he aggressively challenges the traditional Western historical consensus, right? The idea that the first caliph, Abu Bakr, was just the obvious natural choice.
Yeah, the undisputed successor. Madelung basically argues that assumption is fundamentally flawed. So, okay, let's unpack that.
Very good start.
Well, I think if we want to understand the political chaos that erupted down the street, we actually have to start with the foundational blueprint of this community. We have to look at what the Quran itself says about succession.
Which is where the historical debate usually kicks off. I mean, non-Muslim historians frequently point out that the Quran doesn't explicitly name Muhammad's successor in some clear, legalistic way.
Right, there's no official contract or anything.
Exactly. And they use that silence to argue that leadership was always meant to be this open, almost democratic political question.
But Madelung pushes back on that, doesn't he?
He does. He points out that the Quran actually provides massive, unmistakable clues through the stories of past prophets. The text is actively setting a historical precedent.
So it's not a blank slate at all.
Far from it. In the Quran, past prophets aren't just isolated spiritual messengers, they are patriarchs.
Ah, okay.
So when you look at Abraham, Moses, or David, they are always succeeded by their families, Isaac, Aaron, Solomon.
Right, it's a family lineage.
Yeah, the Quran places an immense emphasis on kinship. It specifically elevates the prophet's blood relatives, this clan known as the Banu Hashim, to a unique state of purity.
And this wasn't just some symbolic spiritual purity, right? It had very real, tangible economic mechanics tied to it.
Oh, the economics are crucial here. Because of this elevated state of purity, the Banu Hashim were actually forbidden from receiving normal charity.
Wait, really? No alms at all?
No. In this society, giving alms was considered an act of purification for the giver. The alms basically absorbed the defilement or the sins of the people giving them.
Oh, wow. So the money itself was viewed as spiritually dirty.
Exactly. So the prophet's family was considered too spiritually pure to touch that money. Instead, the Quran granted them a specific, designated share of war booty and state property.
Which was known as fey.
Right, fey. It was their protected income.
I picture this like trying to understand a massive corporate merger without reading the founding charter.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, if the charter constantly praises family-run branches and sets up this unique trust fund specifically to protect the founder's family, that family obviously expects to take over the board when the founder steps down.
That is precisely the expectation they had.
But wait, let me push back a bit, because I hear that argument and it seems like there's a massive hole in that logic.
Okay, what is it?
Well, Sunnite apologists often argue that Muhammad was the seal of the prophets, meaning the line of prophecy ended entirely with him.
Right, that's a very common point.
So if there are no more prophets, doesn't that mean his family wasn't supposed to inherit anything? Why would they expect to lead?
It's a prevalent counter-argument, definitely. But Madelung breaks down the textual logic against it. Being the last prophet doesn't necessarily mean his family couldn't inherit his worldly and spiritual rule.
Meaning the caliphate.
Exactly. If you look back at those past prophets in the Quran, Their families didn't just inherit prophethood. They inherited kingship, they inherited wisdom, and the authority to rule.
So the worldly power still passes down even if the divine revelations stop.
Right. And what's fascinating here is how Madelung points out that Muhammad viewed his entire mission through the lens of those past prophets.
So he would have expected the same outcome for his own family.
Most likely, yes. He probably expected his cousin and son-in-law, Ali, to play a central governing role after his death.
Okay, so the textual blueprint is pointing heavily toward the prophet's family, specifically toward Ali, which brings us right back to that jarring split-screen moment in 632 CE.
Right, the geography of that day is so important.
Yeah, because while Ali and the prophet's uncle are privately washing the prophet's body behind a curtain, this massive political earthquake is happening down the street.
At a place called the Saqifa.
Right, the hall of the Banu Saida. What exactly is going on in that room?
Well, to understand the tension in the Saqifa, we have to look at who called the meeting. It was organized secretly by the Ansar.
The Medinan locals?
Yeah, the helpers who had given Muhammad sanctuary years earlier. With the prophet gone, they just assumed the Muhajirun, the immigrants from Mecca, would, pack up and go home.
They thought the whole political project was over.
Basically. So the Ansar wanted to elect their own local leader, a man named Sa'd bin Ubadah. They were trying to secure their own city and reestablish local control.
They weren't trying to usurp a global empire. They just wanted their town back.
Exactly.
Let's actually pause here and give the listener a quick map because we're throwing around a lot of tribal names. Ansar, Muhajirun, Quraysh, Banu Hashim. It can get pretty murky.
Sure, let's break it down. Think of the tribes of Arabia like a set of Russian nesting dolls.
Okay, I like that.
The biggest, most powerful outer doll is the Quraysh. They're the untouchable, old money aristocratic tribe from Mecca.
The heavyweight.
Right. Now, inside that Quraysh umbrella, you have rival clans. You have the Banu Hashim, which is the prophet's specific clan.
Okay, so they're an inner doll.
Yeah. And you also have the Umayyads, who are the incredibly wealthy, traditional power brokers of the Quraysh.
Got it. And where did the Ansar fit in?
The Ansar, the locals in Medina holding this secret meeting, they are outside of that Quraysh umbrella entirely. They are a totally different doll.
Okay, that makes it much clearer. So the Ansar are holding this meeting trying to elect their own guy. But Abu Bakr and Umar, who are two of the most prominent Meccan companions from the Quraysh tribe, they catch wind of it.
Yeah, they hear about it, and they crash the meeting with only a few allies.
And this is where Abu Bakr pulls off this brilliant, just high-stakes political pivot. He doesn't just walk in and ask for power.
No, he leverages the entire sociological reality of Arabia against them. He fundamentally manipulates the psychology of the room.
How does he do that?
Abu Bakr essentially tells the Medinans, look, the vast, heavily armed Bedouin tribes across the desert, they are never going to submit to a local Medinan leader.
Right, because they don't have the status.
Exactly. He argues that the broader Arab tribes only respect the aristocracy of the Quraysh. He tells them a Medinan caliph would instantly trigger a massive, bloody civil war.
Which is a terrifying threat to drop in a room like that.
It is. And by arguing this, Abu Bakr completely ignores the specific divine rights of Muhammad's closest kin, the Banu Hashim.
Oh, right. He shifts the goalposts.
He completely shifts the criteria for leadership from the prophet's family to the only aristocratic tribe the rest of Arabia will obey.
Which raises this enormous question for anyone looking at the timeline. Did Abu Bakr and Umar really just stumble into this brilliantly, or was this a calculated coup?
It's the million-dollar question.
Because, the sources show Abu Bakr standing in that room, offering up Umar and another man, Abu Ubaidah, as candidates for the crowd to choose from.
Yeah, he throws their names into the ring.
He essentially creates fake candidates, right?
Yeah.
Just to make himself look like the only reasonable, moderate compromise.
It really highlights Abu Bakr's political genius.
Yeah.
Whether he planned this for months or just improvised it in the moment, he was a coolly calculating strategist.
Seriously.
And you have to notice what he didn't say in that room. He strategically avoided mentioning any blood relationship to the prophet as a qualification for leadership.
Because if he had
brought up bloodlines, the entire room would have suddenly remembered that Ali, who is literally washing the body down the street, had the absolute strongest claim.
Wow. So by framing it purely about the broader Quraysh tribe, he secures the immediate backing of the old Meccan aristocracy.
Exactly. But we should point out, this was not a civilized debate over tea.
No, it got violent, right?
Highly violent. As the meeting broke down, Umar and his allies physically jumped on the sick Medinan leader, Sa'd bin Ubadah.
They physically attacked him.
Yeah, Umar is literally recorded yelling, "May God kill Sa'd."
That is wild.
And the Pledge of Allegiance wasn't secured just by smooth persuasion. A rough nomadic tribe known as the Banu Aslam suddenly arrived, flooding the streets of Medina.
So they brought in muscle.
Yeah, they provided the physical intimidation needed to push the pledge through. Even Umar himself later admitted in a public speech that this Saqifa meeting was a falta.
A falta, that means a precipitate, flawed, or hasty deal, right?
Exactly. Umar claimed this falta was absolutely necessary to prevent anarchy in that terrifying vacuum of power. But he explicitly warned the community that no one should ever decide leadership that way again.
That is so telling. So, okay, Abu Bakr secures the political title of caliph. He has the state, but he has a massive looming problem.
A moral authority.
Right. The moral and religious authority still belongs to the Prophet's family, the Banu Hashim. And here's where it gets really interesting, because Abu Bakr realizes he can't beat their moral authority in the court of public opinion.
So he transitions to economic warfare.
Yes. He needed to neutralize Ali and the family, and he did it by systematically isolating them.
And the flashpoint for that becomes inheritance.
Walk us through what happens with Fatima.
So Ali's wife, Fatima, who is the Prophet's own daughter, comes to Abu Bakr to claim her inheritance. This estate included highly valuable, income-producing agricultural lands in Fadak and Khaybar.
Wait, so this is the Prophet's direct descendant asking for her father's estate. How does Abu Bakr navigate that without looking like an absolute tyrant?
Well, he drops a total bombshell. He looks at the Prophet's daughter and claims that he, Abu Bakr, is the only person who ever heard the Prophet say, "We prophets do not have heirs. Whatever we leave is alms."
He tells the Prophet's own daughter that her father secretly disinherited her.
Yes, to her face.
How did the community process that? I mean, it feels exactly like a modern hostile takeover.
How so?
Well, if you want to neutralize the founding family of a company, you freeze their bank accounts, you seize their assets, and you do it all under the impenetrable guise of strict company policy.
Right, you claim your hands are tied.
Yeah, you throw your hands up and say, "Hey, I'm just doing what the founder wanted." It is such a brutal tactic.
It is a devastatingly effective political maneuver. By claiming this, Abu Bakr confiscates their valuable lands, completely cutting off the economic engine they would need to fund any potential political opposition.
But there's more to it than just the money, isn't there?
Much more. Madelung highlights an even deeper, more insidious layer to this ruling. Remember earlier, the rule about the family being too pure to accept alms.
Right, the defilement. The charity was seen as absorbing people's sins.
Exactly. By declaring the entirety of the Prophet's estate as alms and telling the family they can only receive an allowance from it if they are needy, Abu Bakr is forcing them into the very defilement they were divinely protected from.
Oh my gosh.
He is effectively downgrading their religious status.
That is a staggering double blow. They lose their wealth and their sacred purity in one single ruling.
And Fatima was understandably furious. The sources highlight her profound reaction. She boycotted Abu Bakr.
She just cut him off.
Completely. She refused to ever speak a single word to him again for the rest of her life. And when she tragically died just 6 months later, Ali buried her secretly in the dead of night.
Specifically so Abu Bakr couldn't attend the funeral. I mean, that is a massive, silent protest against the new state.
It was. But after her death, Ali found himself entirely isolated. The prominent men in society, reading the political winds, had just stopped speaking to him.
He was frozen out.
Completely. The community was on the brink of tearing apart, and to prevent a total collapse, Ali finally, reluctantly, pledged allegiance to Abu Bakr.
He caved for the sake of the community.
Yes, but the emotional core of the community was deeply fractured. You see it in the bitter, grief-stricken poetry of the era, lamenting the humiliation of the family and the squandering of their divine rights.
Wow. So Abu Bakr pulls this off. He secures the state, he neutralizes the family, and he establishes his rule. But his reign is actually really short, right?
Yeah, just a couple years.
And on his deathbed, he doesn't leave things to chance. No chaotic secret meetings this time. He decisively appoints Umar as his successor.
Right.
And Umar, inheriting this massively expanding empire, tries to fundamentally change the rules of the game.
Umar is a complex, towering figure in this history. He was known to be harsh, but deeply, fiercely committed to strict Islamic principles.
He had a real vision for what this should be.
He did. He didn't want this new state to just be the old Meccan tribal aristocracy wearing a new religious mask. So he creates something revolutionary, The Diwan.
The army pension register. Explain how that shifted the balance of power.
Well, wealth was just pouring in from the conquests of Syria and Persia. But instead of distributing this massive new wealth based on noble blood or tribal hierarchy, Umar distributes it by sabika.
What does sabika mean in this context?
It means early merit and service in Islam. The veterans who fought in the earliest, most dangerous battles, like the Battle of Badr, they got the highest pensions. He was trying to engineer an Islamic meritocracy.
Which means he is actively trying to curb the power of the old Meccan aristocracy, specifically the Umayyads and those aggressive military commanders like Khalid bin al-Walid.
Precisely. The exact people Abu Bakr had relied on heavily to win the initial wars of consolidation.
So Umar is pivoting away from the aristocracy.
Yes, and he also refused to act like a king. He relied heavily on shura, or consultation, with the early companions. And interestingly, he tried to integrate Ali and the Prophet's family back into the fold.
Really? How did he do that?
Through the Diwan. He gave them massive pensions, acknowledging their high status and early merit.
But, and correct me if I'm wrong, he still kept them completely insulated from actual executive power, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so they got the money and the respect, but not the governorships. Which makes me look at Umar's grand design and see a glaring contradiction.
What's the contradiction?
Well, he wants this strict Islamic meritocracy rewarding piety over bloodlines, but he's still actively upholding Abu Bakr's original Saqifa rule that only the aristocratic Quraysh tribe can hold the caliphate.
That is a huge tension.
Right. How could he possibly balance religious merit with keeping those old tribal elites happy?
You've hit on Umar's fatal paradox. He desperately wanted piety to rule, but he was a stark realist.
He knew the military reality.
He recognized that the vast new Arab empire was held together by the military might and the administrative skill of that old Meccan aristocracy.
He needed them.
Exactly. His attempt to Islamicize the caliphate ultimately failed because he simply couldn't dismantle the entrenched tribal power structures that Abu Bakr had utilized to save the state in the first place.
And on top of that, his policies weren't just balancing tribal lines, they were aggressively Arab-centric.
They were. Umar identified the expanding borders of Islam, largely with the Arabs at this stage. He expelled non-Muslims from Arabia entirely, and he placed severe social limits on non-Arab Muslims within the empire.
And that specific policy of marginalizing non-Arabs is what directly led to his violent death,
Yes.
right?
He was assassinated in the mosque by a Persian captive named Abu Lulu.
Which brings us to the ultimate climax of this historical arc. Umar is on his deathbed, bleeding from a stab wound. And the fatal paradox between his idealized meritocracy and the reality of a tribal oligarchy finally snaps.
Because he has to choose a successor.
Exactly. And Umar decides to mandate a shura, an electoral council, to choose who comes next.
This is where the true mechanics of power are laid bare. Umar appoints a six-man council. He explicitly warns them against letting their own specific clans dominate the decision.
So he knows the tribal forces are waiting to tear it apart.
He knew they were waiting in the wings to destroy his fragile meritocracy.
But from what I understand, the deck was basically stacked from the moment the council sat down. Walk us through the psychology of that room.
So the choice ultimately narrows down to two men, Ali, representing the Prophet's family, and Uthman, representing the wealthy Umayyad clan and the old Meccan aristocracy.
The two ideological extremes.
Exactly. A man named Abd al-Rahman bi Auf acts as the tiebreaker. And Auf uses this brilliant legal trap to corner Ali.
A trap? How?
He asks Ali if he will rule by the Quran, the practice of the Prophet, and the precedent set by the first two caliphs, Abu Bakr and Umar.
He asks Ali to validate the very systems that disinherited his own family.
Exactly the trap.
That is brutal.
Ali, of course, refuses to bind himself to the precedent of Abu Bakr and Umar. Uthman, however, immediately agrees to all conditions.
Surprise, surprise.
Right. But the deeper psychological reality, which Umar himself had previously confided, was that the broader Quraysh tribe was deeply jealous of the Banu Hashim.
The rest of the aristocracy resented them.
Deeply. They simply did not want the family that had been divinely chosen for prophethood to also hold the caliphate.
Because if Ali took power, the Banu Hashim would become this divine dynasty that no other clan could ever challenge.
Precisely. The Quraysh wanted power to circulate, Given a choice, the tribal elite vastly preferred a corporate rotating oligarchy where power could be shared among the aristocrats.
Rather than submitting to a divine family dynasty.
Exactly. So off gives the caliphate to Uthman.
And with that single decision, the empire officially shifts back into the hands of the old Meccan aristocracy, the Umayyads.
The circle is complete.
Yeah, the very people who had fought Muhammad the hardest in the early days of his mission now literally controlled his empire. So what does this all mean for us?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the crux of Madelung's ultimate thesis. It completely shatters the simplified narrative of early Islamic history.
It's not just a straightforward, peaceful handover.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Ali was not passed over because he was too young. He wasn't passed over because he lacked political experience. He was passed over precisely because the broader tribal establishment deeply feared the absolute, unquestionable authority of the Prophet's bloodline.
It is an incredible, almost breathless journey when you trace the timeline. I mean, in just a few years following 632 CE, a spiritual community morphed into a sprawling empire.
Because it happened so fast.
So fast. We went inside the secret, chaotic room with the Saqifa. We watched the painful, calculated economic disinheritance of the Prophet's own daughter.
A hostile takeover.
Right. And then we saw the creation of a fragile meritocracy under Umar, and we watched it inevitably snap right back into the hands of the old tribal elite under Uthman.
The mechanisms of power are always visible if you look closely enough at the timeline.
They really are.
The complex theological debates that developed centuries later were, in many ways, just retroactive justifications for these rapid-fire, bare-knuckle political survival tactics.
And for you listening, this isn't just ancient, dusty history. The news headlines you read today, the geopolitical borders of the modern Middle East, the deep theological debates defining millions of lives, they are all still echoing the exact arguments made in Medina in those fateful days.
The tension between divine authority and political pragmatism hasn't disappeared. It just changed its clothes.
The past is never really dead, is it?
It never is.
And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over, something we haven't even explicitly mentioned yet, but that builds on everything we've unpacked today.
Let's hear it.
What if Muhammad's failure to leave a signed, sealed, and delivered will wasn't an accident? Oh, that's a huge question.
Right. What if he remained silent on purpose, knowing that the traditional Arab tribal system simply could not handle a hereditary dynasty yet? Did the political survival and explosive expansion of the early Islamic empire actually require the spiritual compromise of pushing the Prophet's family aside?
That is a question that requires stepping right back into those murky historical waters.
It sure does, because sometimes all you have is the history to guide you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the consensus and keep questioning history.